To really get Horrigan, you have to get the Enclave.
Absolutely. You really do. They weren't just another faction scrambling in the wasteland. They saw themselves as something much bigger.
The legitimate government.
The only legitimate continuation of the pre-war United States government, yeah. Operating from their offshore base, the control station, and CLV, the oil rig.
And they were, authoritarian doesn't quite cover it, does it?
No. Authoritarian, genocidal, a deep state, obsessed with its own twisted ideology. Their entire worldview was built on this virulent, intense hatred of mutants.
Rooted in this idea of, like, quasi-scientific social Darwinism.
Precisely. They were obsessed with genetic purity, believed they were the last bastion of pure humans. Everyone else out there in the wasteland, anyone exposed to radiation, any mutation,
They had to go.
they had to be purged. That was the goal. Nothing less than global extermination of anyone they deemed mutant. It's chilling stuff.
It really is, and it's into this environment, this pressure cooker of paranoia and hate, that Frank Horrigan first appears, born in 2211.
So he's about 31 by the time of the final showdown in Fallout 2.
Right, and initially he's just a human male, a normal human male, holding a really important job, actually.
Yeah, a special agent in the Enclave Secret Service. That's not just any grunt position.
No, he was assigned directly to President Dick Richardson, his personal bodyguard.
Which tells you something, right? He must have been seen as competent, loyal, stable. At least initially.
Initially, yeah. Because the sources do hint that maybe that stability wasn't quite as solid as it seemed. We see that first crack pretty early on.
Yeah. When he loses that high-profile gig protecting the president.
It just ends abruptly.
And the reason? The sources mention an undisclosed psychotic incident or blunder. Something serious enough to pull him off the detail.
But not serious enough to get him executed or thrown in the brig, apparently.
Which is telling, isn't it? They didn't get rid of him. They just demoted him. Sent him out on wasteland patrol duty. Standard field work.
So they recognized something was off, maybe some instability, but they still saw value in him.
I think so. It suggests they saw his, let's say, aggressive potential or his combat skills as outweighing the risk. As long as he wasn't right next to the president, maybe they thought they could still use him.
His raw utility mattered more than his mental state. That's a pretty dark calculation.
It is. And it sets the stage perfectly for what happens next, because that baseline volatility, whatever it was, is about to collide head-on with the Forced Evolutionary Virus.
Right. Which brings us squarely into the period of, well, body horror. There's no other way to put it.
No, there really isn't. The pivotal event happens in 2236. Horrigan's out on patrol, presumably near the Mariposa military base area.
Which is ground zero for FEV, basically. Highly contaminated.
Extremely. Enclave squads were excavating there, digging into the ruins, probably looking for FEV samples or pre-war tech, and Horrigan gets exposed.
But it wasn't just FEV exposure, was it?
No, and this is critical. He was exposed simultaneously to a massive dose of FEV and intense localized irradiation from the site.
So a double hit.
A catastrophic double hit. The results were unique. Unlike standard supermutants, it triggered this immediate, massive physical mutation. The sources call him a huge brick of a man.
He basically becomes a super mutant on steroids, physically speaking. Bigger, stronger than maybe any seen before.
Physically, yes. A successful mutation from a purely brute force perspective. But the combination, the FEV and the radiation together, it absolutely wrecked his mind.
So the body becomes this powerhouse, but the person inside is damaged.
Severely.
Severely psychologically compromised. That's the man or creature that arrived back on the oil rig in 2236.
Which kicks off this horrifying 2-year stretch from 2236 to 2238, what the sources basically describe as torture disguised as science.
Yeah, he's shipped back to the control station Enthalpy, and he immediately becomes Exhibit A for the research division, a guinea pig.
And this is where Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Charles Curling steps into the picture, head of the Chemical Corps.
Curling, yes. He's a key figure, not just in Horrigan's story, but in the Enclave's entire genocidal endgame. He saw Horrigan not as a soldier to be treated, but as a test subject.
Exactly, a living laboratory. His goal wasn't to help Horrigan, it was to use him, to experiment on him with modified FEV strains.
Why? What was he trying to achieve?
He was trying to refine the virus, isolate its effects, maybe enhance them, understand how it worked, ultimately to weaponize it for mass deployment against the wasteland. Horrigan became the unwilling key to unlocking the FEV Krilling-13 toxin.
Oh my God. So Horrigan's suffering directly fueled the creation of the plague meant to kill everyone else.
That's the dark irony. The operational logs from that time, they don't even use his name consistently. He's the mutating trooper. or just the experiment.
Dehumanized completely, even by the people who made him what he was.
Utterly. And they noted his extreme volatility, the FEV, the radiation. It left him dangerously unstable. He required constant heavy sedation.
Just to keep him from, what, tearing the place apart?
Pretty much. The sources mentioned repeated incidents, serious ones, resulting in major bloodshed whenever he was conscious, even for brief periods.
Imagine that. You're on the Enclave's super secure HQ, the oil rig, and down in the labs there's this monster they created that needs constant drugging or people die.
It speaks volumes about how valuable they perceived his potential power to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were willing to tolerate this massive internal security risk, dedicate huge resources just to contain him.
Because the potential payoff, a controllable superweapon, was too tempting.
Exactly. They couldn't bring themselves to just put him down, even though he was a mutant, the very thing they aided, because his mutation was just so potent.
So you have this bizarre situation. He's probably the physically strongest being on the entire rig.
By far.
But the scientists, the guys in lab coats like Curling, they look down on him.
With utter contempt, according to the sources. He was a genetically engineered freak, an experiment, disposable data points walking around in a giant angry body.
But here's the really twisted part, a psychological aspect. Horrigan himself, he never saw himself as a mutant, did he?
No. And that's perhaps the most chilling detail. Somehow, through the brain damage, or maybe through sheer Enclave indoctrination before the incident, or a combination, he's still identified as Frank Horrigan.
Secret Service agent, loyal Enclave soldier.
Exactly. Still believing in the mission, still hating mutants. He became a mutant who dedicated his existence to exterminating other mutants, seemingly without grasping the irony.
That level of disconnect, it's hard to fathom. He's a prisoner in this monstrous form, serving the very people who mutated him, who view him as a freak. And he thinks he's the hero enforcing the rules.
He was, in a way, the perfect Enclave weapon. Powerful, terrifying, and utterly convinced of the righteousness of the cause, even when he himself is an embodiment of what they claim to despise.
So this horrific 2-year period of experimentation, it finally ends. Why? Did they fix him?
Not fixed, no. By early 2239, it was clear the mutation was permanent, irreversible. They couldn't turn him back.
And they still couldn't control him reliably without pumping him full of sedatives.
Right. Which isn't very practical for a frontline weapon. They needed a permanent solution. Something that could contain him, keep him alive, and allow them to deploy him.
And that solution was the suit.
The suit. In March 2239, Frank Horrigan was permanently sealed inside a highly customized suit of power armor.
And this wasn't just off-the-rack T-51B, was it?
Oh, no. This was bespoke, custom engineered specifically for his massive mutated frame. Think less armor and more walking containment vessel.
It was life support, wasn't it?
Critically, yes. The lore states his FEV-altered body couldn't actually survive outside that sealed environment anymore. The armor provided life support, environmental regulation,
Right.
everything. It was his prison and his means of survival, all in one.
A walking Iron Maiden, almost.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And the level of cybernetic integration needed was immense. We get that quote from his peer, another Enclave soldier named Granite.
What did Granite say?
He assessed Horrigan being more than half machine.
Wow. So not just a guy in armor, but a true cyborg. Flesh and FEV-mutated tissue interwoven with advanced tech.
Exactly. Think about the stresses involved. His sheer size, the super mutant's strength. His own skeleton probably couldn't handle it without assistance.
So the armor needed internal mechanisms.
Specialized systems. The sources mention leg regulator mechanisms, just to allow him to walk and maneuver without, shattering his own bones or punching holes in the deck plating.
Compensating for that raw, uncontrollable power.
And similar systems for his arms. Arm control mechanisms, cybernetics needed to provide the fine motor skills to actually aim and fire the high-end weapons he carried.
Like that plasma gun.
And the huge knife. A purely FEV-addled mind might just flail. The cybernetics likely provided the interface and control.
So he becomes this fusion. Mutated biology, advanced cybernetics, sealant and custom power armor. Purpose-built for one thing.
Killing. He becomes the Enclave's ultimate executioner, their go-to solution for messy problems.
And the sources say he was known for being particularly brutal.
Sadistic, even. It sounds like he took pleasure in the speed and brutality. The Enclave leadership started deploying him specifically to solve what they called a number of sticky problems.
Meaning?
Dangerous reconnaissance, eliminating or capturing high-value targets. When the situation needed overwhelming force and maximum intimidation, They sent Horrigan.
Surgically applied terror, like you said, and all this violence, his entire existence now, is aimed directly at fulfilling the Enclave's grand plan.
The FEV Curling 13 Toxin Project.
Yeah.
Yes, that's his raison d'etre, his reason for being in that suit.
Dr. Curling, having used Horrigan as his testbed, perfects this airborne toxin.
FEV Curling 13. And the scale.
Yeah.
We have to emphasize the scale.
Yeah.
This wasn't about cleaning up one region.
No, this was global.
Global genocide. The toxin was designed for worldwide release. Anyone with significant mutation or radiation exposure, which by 2242 was almost everyone on Earth outside the Enclave's isolated pockets.
And the kill rate they were aiming for.
The documents state a terrifyingly precise 99.5% extermination rate. They wanted to wipe the slate clean, leaving only themselves.
Unimaginable horror. And Horrigan played a direct role in the final stages.
A crucial one. By 2242, Curling's toxin was ready. But before unleashing it globally, they needed final tests. They needed to confirm the toxin's effectiveness and, just as importantly, verify that their own inoculation vaccine worked.
They needed test subjects.
Exactly. Specifically, they needed what the Enclave termed pure-strained humans, people with minimal radiation exposure, basically baseline humans, to test the toxin on and ensure the vaccine protected only the Enclave personnel.
And Horrigan was the one sent to get them.
He personally led the raids. This is where we see his most infamous atrocities recorded in the lore, the targets, Vault 13.
The original home of the Vault Dweller from Fallout 1.
And the tribal village of Arroyo, the home of the Chosen One, the player character in Fallout 2.
These weren't military targets. These were kidnappings on a massive scale.
Purely resource acquisition human resources for Dr. Curling's final deadly experiments. We even have a date for one of them.
Which one?
The raid on Vault 13, March 16th, 2242. Horrigan and his special squads stormed the vault, captured the dwellers,
Including the Chosen One's people from Arroyo later.
and shipped them all back to the oil rig's detention levels, living test subjects delivered by the Enclave's pet monster.
So he wasn't just muscle. He was the tip of the spear for the genocide project, directly responsible for capturing the people needed to greenlight the apocalypse.
It perfectly sets up the final confrontation, doesn't it? His entire existence, everything he's become, everything he's done.
Yeah.
It all leads directly to the threat against the player's people and the entire world.
Which brings us to the oil rig, the final battle.
After the player character, the Chosen One, has fought their way through the base and likely dealt with President Richardson, Horrigan is the last line of defense.
The ultimate gatekeeper.
And he's got that unique end-boss plasma gun and his knife. He's built, statistically and narratively, to be this seemingly insurmountable obstacle.
And his final words, they really capture that Enclave arrogance, don't they?
Absolutely. There's no negotiation, no second thoughts. When the Chosen One confronts him, Horrigan just drips contempt. He sees the player as nothing more than a mutant.
Yeah, I think we have the quote here. You've gotten a lot further than you should have, but then you haven't met Frank Horrigan either.
Pure disgust. He genuinely believes the player's survival up to that point is just luck, an anomaly he's about to correct.
He completely dismisses the idea that the player could actually stop the Enclave's plan. He's certain of his victory and the toxin's release.
Total conviction. He sees their struggle as futile. He's Frank Horrigan. The plan is in motion. End of story. In his mind, anyway.
That's not how it ends, is it? His defeat isn't clean.
No, it's brutal. And, significantly, it's systemic. The Chosen One doesn't just overpower him in a straight duel, typically. The key is overloading the oil rig's main reactor.
So it's the destruction of his environment, his support system, that takes him down?
Exactly. Horrigan, the machine man, is ultimately undone by the failure of the larger machine, the oil rig itself. The reactor overload causes catastrophic damage to his specialized power armor, his life support.
It kills him slowly?
Very slowly and painfully, based on the descriptions. Even as the rig is tearing itself apart, even as its systems fail, he's described as still struggling, trying to get up, trying to taunt the Chosen One last time as his engineered body finally gives out.
That FEV toughness, even at the very end.
Right. Even with failing life support, the mutated part of him keeps fighting until the physical destruction is absolute.
And the visual depiction of his death.
Yeah.
It really drives home the themes we've been talking about.
Oh, yeah. The final death animation is quite graphic. It explicitly shows the effects of the rig's self-destruct sequence on him.
What happens?
The lore details the shattering of his bionic eye, the destruction of his mechanical arm control systems. The very cybernetics keeping him functional are ripped apart by the power surges and explosions. His custom-built prison, the suit that kept him alive, becomes his coffin as the oil rig dies around him.
Wow. So the Enclave built this weapon reliant on their peak technology.
And it was destroyed when that technology failed catastrophically. It's incredibly symbolic.
And his death wasn't just the end of one boss fight. It had immediate, massive consequences.
Huge. His death happening right alongside the defeat of President Richardson and probably Dr. Curling getting caught in the explosion. This all happened just before the oil rig went up in a nuclear fireball.
In the fall of 2242.
Right. So in one fell swoop, Horrigan is gone, the president is gone, the chief scientist is gone, their main base of operations is obliterated, and crucially, the FEV Curling-13 toxin is presumably destroyed before it can be released globally.
The entire genocidal plan collapsed at the finish line. Horrigan's death was the linchpin falling out.
It represented the total failure of the Enclave's highest military and scientific echelons at the most critical moment possible. They put all their eggs in the Horrigan FEV basket, and both were smashed simultaneously.
So summing him up, he really was the Enclave's greatest weapon, but also maybe their biggest mistake.
I think that's fair to say. He was their ultimate asset, this unparalleled force multiplier, but he was also this walking contradiction, a mutant created and deployed by mutant haters.
A weapon that required constant, massive resources just to keep stable, housed right in their command center.
Yeah, a huge drain and risk.
Yeah.
He embodied their power, but also their hypocrisy and the inherent instability of their ideology, built from the thing they feared, controlled by technology, and ultimately destroyed when that control failed.
A psychological and biological paradox, like you said. Constructed, used, and discarded by the system he served.
Proudly served, it seems, right to the bitter end.
Which brings us back to the man inside, or what was left of him. Frank Horrigan, the human. Engineered, experimented on, sedated, sealed in armor. Viewed as a tool, a freak, by his own side. We know about that undisclosed psychotic incident even before the mutation. We know about the heavy sedation needed later to stop him from killing his own handlers during those incidents.
The mental damage was clearly profound, even setting aside the indoctrination.
So here's something to think about for you listening. Given that profound mental damage, the FEV exposure, the constant sedation, the psychotic breaks, how much of Frank Horrigan, the original human bodyguard, do you think was actually aware?
Aware of the horror of his own existence.
Yeah.
Aware that he was serving the people who had destroyed him and turned him into this thing.
Did any part of the man buried under all that mutation and metal and programming ever grasp the terrible irony of his life and death?
Did the Enclave just build a weapon? Or did they build a prison so perfect the inmate never even realized he was captive?
Something to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the heart of the Enclave's darkness.